All right, let's call this the Athletic Philosopher Podcast, episode 24. No dress rehearsal, team. This is our real life. We are still in the throes of our move. We are safely settled here on the North Shore of Chicago. For those of you who are watching, you can see I've got a beautiful moving box right behind me. No point in beautifying the space. This is just genuine and authentic, real life. I am your host of this podcast, a former professor of sport history, sport philosophy, sport sociology, psychology, current fitness coach, life coach, mentor, endurance training coach, tribal prof, trail running rabbi, all of the above, none of the above, mostly somewhere in between, swirling around this thing we call life, experience, and a search for truth, meaning, and purpose through the athletic endeavor. All right. I am sitting here. It is Tuesday, January the 28th. There we go. And tomorrow I am off to Arizona to run a 50-mile trail race with 12 of my tribal training teammates and one beautiful pacer who's coming from the team as well, along with our video guy Charlie, who is just like the absolute coolest. So I am very pumped. Lots of things are going through my mind as we, in one sense, settle down, put roots into the ground here in our new home, but also have to get up, fly free, and go on a gigantic adventure of exploration and self-knowledge. And I have some notes here about what I wanted to talk about today, and I'll just read them right now, and we'll see what comes out of this, as I do with so many of these podcasts, where I have a loose idea, we hit record, and then we see what happens. So, Tuesday, do a podcast recording. Your perception defines your reality. Yeah. This idea of what am I focusing on, what am I thinking about as I go through the first international move of my life with my family and for my wife and her work. This is not I'm not the motive power in our family that is determining the move. We are happily along for the ride to support and encourage my wife in her career as she pushes and challenges herself to grow. It's a theme in our family. It's a big time theme. And I was asked a question by one of my one-on-one coaching clients about missing the old trails that I used to run on back in Ontario. And I'm going to tell you the truth here. I'm always going to miss those trails. I believe those are world-class trails. And I truly believe the little 4-mile loop that I used to run down at Scottsdale Farm in Ballinafad, Ontario, on the main Bruce Trail, but mostly on side trails, I'm willing to put that 4-mile trail run up against any 4 miles in the world, anywhere. Maybe not in terms of striking, spectacular beauty, right? I mean, it's pretty amazing in there, but it's not like running up and getting onto the top of a mountain and looking out for, miles and miles and miles. But in terms of the variability and the fun and the challenge of the trail with its winding turns, with its steep little ups and downs, all the roots and the rocks, and certainly there's a really fun technical section with lots of rocks right in the middle. I think it's the most fun 4 miles you can run anywhere in the world. And trail running has really been my source of inspiration, my source of motivation, my source of transcendence, my source of understanding, my source of peace and solitude. And it's really been in those forests, specifically the ones that I've been running the past 8 years when I lived up on my tiny little rural village up on the Niagara Escarpment there in southwestern / central Ontario. I'm always going to miss those. There's never going to be a day where I don't wish that I could just hop in my car and drive the 12 minutes down to the trail on a country road, run for 35 minutes on the most fun 4 miles in the world, and then head back to take care of the rest of my day. But the first sentence there, your perception defines your reality, right? The mind is powerful. The mind is so powerful that it can take what's good and make it bad, or that it can take what's bad and make it good, simply by switching around our perception. And in the modern world where we are told that the only things that are real are the things that can be measured, recorded, observed, and then predicted, my perception does not determine reality. And that's true. Like, there is an objective world out there. Even if I wish it wasn't so, let's say if I wish I could fly, right? My perception is not strong enough to determine that reality. Like, if I jump off a tall building and I just close my eyes hard enough and think I'm flying. Yeah, my perception might be one thing, yeah, but when I hit the ground, like, reality's going to say, yeah, your perception was wrong. Your perception was wrong. So when I say your perception defines your reality, I'm not suggesting that your mind can override the material, objective world in which we all live and are subject to, right? The laws of nature. What I'm simply suggesting here is that the way that I think about the world determines the meaning of things in the world and absolutely conditions my experiences in the world. Like, as a philosopher, I'm not interested in metaphysics. I'm not interested in the perfect definitions of things so that I can understand the objective truth that surrounds us. I'm interested in phenomenology. I'm interested in how we experience the world. And that places an emphasis on the subjective because we are individuals, and all we really have to gauge the world on is our individual experiences as we move through the world. And from that vantage point, my perception absolutely defines my reality. And here's how it works when it comes to the move and these running trails, right? I was asked this question, do you miss the trails? And here was my response. I'm not focusing on what I'm missing from where I used to live. I'm not focusing on the fact we don't have a horse farm in our backyard. I'm not focusing on the fact that I never have to see a freeway. I'm not focusing on the fact that there aren't 15,000 people directly in my vicinity all wanting to go do something similar to what I want to do in terms of, like, go shopping, run errands, even going to public skating, for example, right? When we used to go public skating back in our little village, I would dress my kids at our rural country farmhouse, right? I'd load them in a wagon and we would walk through a snowstorm or a blizzard to the arena in our village because that's the biggest building in the entire village, right? And when we would get there, sometimes we would be the only people on the ice because the weather was too bad. And let's just face it, there's just not a lot of people around. Went and took my kids public skating on a Sunday afternoon here in our new suburban home on the North Shore. We had to wait 15 minutes in the line just to pay for the public skating, right? Big difference. Big time difference. So I'm not thinking about the things that we left behind. That's not my reality anymore. I don't walk outside that old farmhouse anymore. I don't drive the country roads anymore. But if all I do and think about is, oh, I wish where we lived was more like where we used to live, well, then my perception is stuck in the past. My perception is going to make me a depressed person because I cannot get over the things that have happened and I can't move forward with my life. So I'm not focusing on what I'm missing from home. Instead, I'm focusing on what I can do now that I couldn't when I was at home. What are the new opportunities? What are the different things that I missed out on living in that small rural village in rural Ontario? There's lots of opportunities. There's lots of exciting things to do. One of the things, we'll go right back to the public skating. We'll go right back to the ice arena team to keep on building out this idea. One of the things I loved doing is playing pickup hockey or taking my skates, going to find an outdoor pond or an outdoor rink and skating. There were lots of opportunities to do that back home, but they never seemed to align with my schedule. They never seemed to align with my ability to capitalize on those opportunities. I go and I check the sort of the schedule, the calendar of events that this ice arena, this big, fancy, swanky, very nice ice arena, in these affluent North Shore suburbs that we live in now. I go and I check, and for 2 hours every single day, right in the middle of the day, they have open hockey where you show up with all your equipment. You can just noodle around with a stick and puck on one end of the ice if that's what you want, or if there's enough people on the ice, you can organize your own game of shinny. Of course, goalies are always free. Gosh, goalie equipment's so expensive for the kids, but once you're an adult, like, it must pay for itself with all of the free ice time you get as a goalie. But that's something that was not available to me. Like, when I was looking to find a place to go play hockey or to play shinny, when I would go, the times weren't that great, right? It's not a lot of people, so you can't actually get like a good game or anything going. So one of the things I'm really looking forward to after I come back from this race is like lacing up my skates for the next couple months and utilizing the opportunity to go and play hockey way more easily at an ice arena that's a 10-minute drive from my house on the way to picking up my kids from their school, right? It easily will fit into the rhythm of my life, and it will enhance my life because I miss playing hockey. And even though we lived in this winter climate where we had this beautiful winter wonderland, like, I wasn't doing one of the things that I loved. Now, in this new place, I can do that. And you guys know how important moving your body in ways that you love is to somebody like me, this athletic philosopher guy. Especially he's the one who tells you to train from your heart and play with love. It's very important. And instead of thinking about the trails that I don't have, all I am noticing is the tremendous amount of forest that's around here. Tons of forest trails, tons of bike trails, tons of gravel paths for me to work on different parts, let's say, of my training. And instead of thinking about, oh, I don't have those dynamic trails that I used to have, you know what I have now? The ability to train like a runner. The ability to put down times that other runners can look at and see, yo, that guy's a good runner. And not like that's really what drives me or motivates me, but it's something that has been, I would say, out of my grasp. When you run on technical trails with lots of elevation and very difficult terrain, it's hard for other people to know the difficulty, to know the challenge, and to really know your athletic potential. So I'm excited to maybe switch up my training a little bit, move into some more standard types of measurements, not be afraid of the competitions, with other people in these areas, and really test myself and challenge myself, right? Another part about focusing on what you can do as opposed to what you're leaving behind is this opportunity for growth, right? It's like, if I truly desire to live a happy and a good life, I cannot allow the strings of the past to keep me in the past. I need to grow. I need to mature. I need to make the right sacrifices in order to continue to receive the blessings that I believe are going to come to us from this move, from this new opportunity. And realistically, this is something we all need in our lives. We need the ability to understand how our perspective changes our experience. And when thinking about the role of athletic training, this next line that I have on this little Google Doc that I made a few notes on, it says, how athletic training teaches you this. Your perception defines your reality. How can athletic training teach you this? That's what this pod is about, apparently. Training, athletic competition, sports, physical activity, exercise. In my philosophy, it is the mediator between the objective and the subjective experience. It is the place that properly calibrates the harmony between these two poles of knowing. We have the numbers, but we have the feel. The feel comes first, but they can't lie about the numbers. There's a dynamic interplay between recording, measuring, observing, with gutting it out, with the underdog winning, with the comeback story, with the last second miracle, with the faith element, with the transcendence each individual feels when they break through a limit that's relative to themselves and not some absolute standard. But then there's also the absolute standard, which gives us something to aim for, which gives us a mark to go after, which gives us a way to measure ourselves and our growth. So here's what I want everybody listening to consider about the power of our minds. There's a very famous personality in the ultra running community. His name is David Goggins. And some of you may have heard of him. If you're not kind of plugged into the do hard things world of fitness, David Goggins is a former Navy SEAL. He was an incredibly overweight and psychologically abused child. He found himself through pushing his body to insane physical limits, particularly like running endurance races without training for them. He is the world pull-up record holder. His book, I think it's like Can't Hurt Me. I've actually never read it, but I know people who don't know what ultra running is who've read the book. So he's getting out there. You know, David Goggins says one of the most truthful things about this relationship between the objective and the subjective and how athletics teach us about this relationship. He says, when you feel like you got to quit, let's say you're running, and you're somebody that can only run, let's say 3 miles. At 3 miles, you think you are 100% out. Like, I can't possibly go any further. He suggests we're only 40% there. That you've only actually give 40% of what you really have. And there's 60% left in the tank for you to go and empty. But your mind stops you. For whatever reason. Pain, excuses, a sense of accomplishment, whatever it is. The mind says you can't go any further. But what happens if we change that? What happens if I say I can go farther? What happens then? You end up going further. You end up going further. I'll never forget when I started to speak this type of language explicitly. The idea that your mind is powerful enough to bend reality to your will. It was in our last Team Ultra, looking up at this monster road that goes up Smith Mesa. It's like a 1,500, 2,000 foot climb. This winding road that never seems to end. You never seem to get to the top. And as we were approaching this, there were a couple people who were hurting in the back, and I had taken it upon myself. You know, I was an assistant coach on the team. Wasn't my explicit role in the race, but, you know, I just felt duty and obligation calling me. I was feeling good. Other people were feeling bad. I should stay back and help them. And as we looked up this gigantic road, I started to forcefully put the idea out there into people's minds that they are mentally strong, that they are mentally resilient, and they are mentally able to turn the discomfort and the pain from a disadvantage into an advantage. Your mind is powerful enough to bend reality towards your perception, but only through your willpower to go through adversity. So when you don't think that you can, let's say, make it up Smith Mesa, you can. And we saw this being played out with one of our athletes, Josh Payne, who ended up having a broken bone in his foot. And he is like really hobbling and he's really hurting. And he's looking up at this gigantic climb. And he thinks there's no possible way I can walk up this road. It's too much. But his mind is powerful enough to bend reality towards his perception. Do you want to try to walk up a gigantic road with a broken foot? Or can you run up it? And that's exactly what he did. He ran up the whole thing. He just decided, I'm doing this. The pain is there, but my mind is not allowing the pain to stop me. Therefore, the pain recedes in a sense. Not the feeling necessarily of the pain, but its ability to stop your thinking, to stop your mindset, to stop your perception from altering the reality that's around you. I'm hurt? Fine. I can come back. I'm hurt? This is the end. Those two different frames are opposite worlds. The same objective reality, two completely different subjective responses. If you believe you can't go any further, you're not going any further. If you believe you can go further, you will go further. Same objective sense. Your body's the same, the fueling's the same, the time of day is the same, the terrain the same. All the things are the same except for what you are willing to bring with your mindset. And the sharp razor of truth that we get in the arena and that we get in training, we get on the feedback in our Garmin watches, with the numbers that are on the barbell, with the heart rates, with all the different measurements that we rely upon to calibrate our experience in the athletic world, they teach us that they are not the masters. Had another guy in our tribe. I'm going to talk about him for a second here. Mindset. Shout out to Phil Lee. You are an absolute killer, bro. Phil Lee running a half marathon. It's called the Frostbite Half Marathon. Phil lives in the South. He lives in the deep South. And before he started to unlock the power of his brain, he was a little bit more, like so many of us, beholden to the material circumstances of the world around him. And let's use this half marathon as an example, right? Phil is a really dialed in athlete in terms of he programs himself. He's really keen on the progressions of training in terms of peaking, in terms of tapering, and in terms of really preparing himself to be objectively ready on race day, which I think is a wonderful aim. And I think everybody trains differently, and Phil's found a lot of success programming himself. But when you train in an optimal way, you kind of disadvantage yourself on competition day, because let's be real, competition day is never perfect. Competition day is always suboptimal. There's always things that get in the way that would give you an excuse to say not be able to run the best race possible. And Phil wants to set a PR in the half marathon in this race, which he did last weekend. So his aim is high performance. I'm training throughout the winter. I'm really in a run heavy block, and I want to set a PR. We've had that crazy cold, that continental cold. One of the things Phil's done this year is go out and running in the cold, sub-zero temperatures, which are not familiar to him where he lives in the deep South. Last year, I'm not running outside. I'm only running on the treadmill. Why? Because it's not optimal to run outside in the freezing cold, and I've got to work on my cadence. I've got to hit particular targets for my pacing. I have to progress towards my optimal moment where I'm going to race, right? And then the day before the race, Phil has this crazy work day. It takes him totally off his routine. He's on his feet for way too long. He's way too tired. He's probably not fueling correctly. He's not preparing his body to go out and run a PR for the half marathon, which is his aim. And Phil from 12 months ago likely doesn't even run the race. This is his own admission. He's like, all of the adversity, all the things in the way would have just made me depressed. It would have stopped me in my tracks because I would have already determined in my mind that I can't run the PR because I don't have the optimal circumstances, which means I don't even want to be in the race. Mindset. Take the same objective conditions, right? Now, Phil's got a mindset where he's on our team. He knows he's accountable. He knows that the number is important, but what's most important about competition is showing up with our pure and open hearts and being truthful about it and giving our best and celebrating the fact that we get to do these competitions, right? That we are in a physical position to test ourselves. And so he kind of releases the pressure. He releases the anxiety, and he's just, perception is, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to try. I kind of know my targets. Let's see if I can hit them. What happens? Phil smashes his PR. He summons, right, the energy to raise his pace in the final mile and to basically get out almost like not a sprint, but like a very, very fast run to ensure that he comes under the mark that he's already set. So objectively speaking, we have bad situation. We have suboptimal training. We've got adversity thrown in the way the day before. The subjective perception of Phil makes all the difference. If these things are too great for me to overcome, so I shouldn't even try, I shouldn't even bother trying, if that's my perception, what's my reality? Depression and quitting. But if my perception is, I still have an opportunity to go and have fun and test myself, let's see what happens. What happens? Personal record. Transcendence. Your perception defines your reality. Your perception is strong enough to bend reality towards your willpower. A positive mindset through adversity allows us to make good in the world where most people think only bad can triumph. I love how these things almost always come full circle. I never plan this stuff out. I literally told you, I told everybody what my plan was for this. I read every single sentence that's in bold here. But I'm coaching, I'm thinking, I'm meditating, I'm philosophizing all the time on these experiences of the athletes that I coach, the people who rely on me as their mentors, right? And as like their fitness and life coaches, and me in my own training and experiences and my own study. And so we're going to come full circle here with maybe one of the most powerful things I've ever read in my life. And it is still like just clinging inside of me, like with such a power. One of the things I've been doing the past year is disciplining myself to do weekly Torah study, to keep up with the weekly readings that Jews all around the world do every week on our Shabbat services. Right? It's not like a church, right? Every synagogue in the world reads the same Torah portion every week, and we do it cyclically. And when we get to the end, we just go right back to the start. And that's one of the cool things about Judaism. You can walk into any synagogue and you know exactly what the sermon's going to kind of be about. You know what Torah reading is going to be. And I've been a little bit behind. Forgive me. We've been moving. I'm like 1 or 2 weeks behind at this point. So I'm reading the end of Genesis. And I get to the portion where, Jacob, Israel, he's about to die. He's talking to like his 12 sons, and they're sort of setting up the Exodus in terms of Joseph dying and like the hundreds of years of slavery that the Israelites are about to endure in Egypt, setting the stage for Moses to come and let my people go and wander through the desert and all that fun stuff. And I'm reading about Jacob, and in all of our in our Torahs that we have at our homes, right? Because the Torah is the scroll, right? It's literally the scroll. And every Torah that's like a book that we keep in our homes and that we read and that we study from, they have commentary. So they're explaining the ancient text. And the commentary that kicked off this portion was just talking about the character of Jacob and why he is revered as a patriarch and why he is a good moral example for Jewish people, really for all people, but in particular for Jewish people to follow. And I'm just going to pull this up here. I'm not going to go get the book. I literally was on a call yesterday with one of my guys, and I had to stop and I had to run and get the book. And they're like, no, I just was reading about this exact thing, this exact theme, which I do oftentimes on my calls. And when we're thinking about the importance of our minds, I actually have to go get the book. All right. I'm going to pause this for 1 second. This is dead air. This is the worst thing that you can do as a podcaster or a broadcaster, but I'm literally just walking over to the mantle over on my fireplace, and I'm grabbing the book, and I'm bringing it back because I have a short quote, but it actually doesn't make sense without the larger commentary. So, how fast can I go? Ready, set, move. Smooth. Thank you for bearing with me, team. Appreciate you. So here's what I'm talking about. This is my study Torah. You open it up for the people who can see, and you got the text up on the top. You got all this funky commentary that's letting you know a little bit more detail and depth and explanation what's going on in the text, and this really allows you to go deeper than if you were to just sort of read the words yourself, because the words they're difficult. They're old. They're thousands and thousands of years old. We don't live in that part of the world. We don't have that culture. So it's a little bit foreign to us. Okay. I am literally just going to read the part of the interpretation here. This is chapter 47 of Genesis, and this is the commentary right before verse 28, which is where the Torah portion starts. It's not clean. They're not these clean chapter breaks in our portions. They're all done for a particular reason. That's not even a podcast I'm going to ever get into, but it's super interesting how they've figured out how to divvy up these portions throughout the year. Okay, so in this concluding Sedra of Genesis, or portion, we see the sunset of Jacob's career. We behold this storm-tossed soul on his deathbed, blessing his children. He is not afraid to die. I will sleep with my fathers, he says. He is at peace with God. I wait for thy salvation, O Lord, are among the last words he utters. He knows that he can never travel beyond God's care. He is at peace with man. Esau, Dinah, Joseph, what a world of strife and suffering and anguish did each of these tragedies bring him? And yet he dies blessing. Though starting as a plain man dwelling in tents, his is no cloistered virtue, and he certainly is no sinless being. Here's the part that hits you like a ton of bricks. But he possesses the rare art of extracting good from every buffeting of destiny. He errs and he stumbles, but he ever rises again, and on the anvil of affliction, his soul is forged. So why should we celebrate the character of Jacob? Is it because he's perfect? It's because he always makes the right decisions? Is it because his life is filled with pleasure and winning all the time? No. His life is filled with suffering and toil and pain. His favorite son is sold into slavery by his brothers, and then they lie to him saying that he was killed. Right? That's pretty horrible if you're a dad. Having your own children kill one of your own, like basically like lie to you. They told Jacob that wild beast got Joseph. Right? He's got these terrible things that keep happening in his life, but he possesses the rare art of extracting good from every buffeting of destiny. And it's the same with Joseph. Joseph's sold into slavery by his brothers. When he is in his master's house, he's thrown into prison because he's falsely accused of trying to sleep with his master's wife, even though she's the one who wants to kind of get busy with him. And at the end of this portion, Joseph is confronting his brothers. And his brothers are finally kind of showing the moral redemption and realizing like the horrible things that they've done to him. And they are pleading with him for forgiveness. And even Joseph says, I'm happy that you sold me into slavery because it allowed me to save lives, right? Joseph interprets dreams of some of the prisoners. He ends up, they're successful interpretations. He ends up interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh successfully in terms of like oncoming famine. And he's able to prepare stores of food, and eventually, right, Joseph's able to save the lives of his own brothers and his father. But without being sold into slavery, he doesn't ever get the chance. So even Joseph, right, is this exemplary character of looking at the objective experience that's in front of him and subjectively choosing goodness, subjectively choosing a positive frame, subjectively choosing to allow his perception to define his own reality. He possesses the rare art of extracting good from every buffeting of destiny. Your mind is powerful enough to bend reality to your perception, to your will. Your perception defines your reality. Athletic training teaches us that pain is more psychological than physical in terms of stopping us from going after our dreams. How many times during a long run have I thought, oh my gosh, my leg is starting to hurt. It's only ever going to get worse. I should probably just stop. And then in 2 minutes, the leg don't even hurt anymore. And I'm moving faster and smoother and better than I have all day. Because my perception is, let me try and keep going, as opposed to, oops, I'd better stop dead in my tracks. Now, I don't need to come to a conclusion. None of this ever has to have a conclusion. But I want to give you something to take into your lives. I want you to recognize how powerful you are. I want you to recognize the agency that you have in determining the way you experience the world around you. The world's going to happen. Good things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. It's your reaction that matters. It's your perception of your options. It's the opportunities in front of you instead of the doors that are closing behind you. It's not what I'm missing from home that matters. It's the new opportunities that are ahead of me that I never would have had if we didn't take on this challenge. So I want you out there to be a believer in the power of your mind, because it is so bloody powerful that it can alter the fabric of reality, not the objective reality at its source, but here's the really fun part. If I have a subjective perception that says I don't quit when pain starts, guess what I objectively get to do? Finish the race. And now I have materially changed objective reality through my sheer subjective will. So it's not about altering the present through our mind and manipulating truth. It's about understanding how my reactions to the reality around me determines my future. Determines my future. And that is absolutely an objective fact that I am in control of. And if you don't get excited about your ability to remake the world for your own visions and dreams and goals, and the signal that reverberates on out from your heart and of your spirit, and that you can affect the world in a powerful way simply through your own desire and determination and love and will, your heart and your spirit and your mind, well, then you're probably not listening to the right podcast. Because that is what I am always thinking about, and I'm always excited. And this is why I love the arena of sports, because it is the best place to figure this stuff out. Mwah. I'm off to run 50 trail miles. I will see all of you beautiful people after the adventure. Peace and love.